I share my experiences, some pretty strange, some pretty new, on how to lead a rugby team, how to lead a non-profit organization, and finally, how to lead when you're directing a film. And the lessons from the three of them are almost mutually exclusive, and some of them you might not find in any leadership book, one of those how-to self-help books. And I'm going to start with talking to you about the challenges and what I had to do differently in leading a rugby team. For those who don't know, rugby is a strange dichotomy. It's a game that is all about the team. You have to play as a team. There's no chance to score a triple century and then field sloppily at fine leg, and yet your team will win and not talk to anyone. In rugby, if you don't play as a team, you will die. It's as simple as that. Metaphorically and sometimes literally. Leadership in this particular sport and the type of leadership demanded from different sports is different. And the type of leaders you see tends to follow a certain fashion. So in rugby, the fashion has very much been, we're all men here, okay? So I'm not going to lead you. I mean, you're cool, I'm cool, and you're tough, and I'm tough, and unless something goes very wrong, when I'll scream at you at halftime, that's the kind of leadership I'll show you when the heat of the battle is on, etc., etc. And I thought to myself, what's wrong with using soft skills? What's wrong in actually understanding, as Jeeves would have said, the psychology of the individual? First of all, the first thing I did was I threw a party at my house. And all the boys came. And we chatted. And in about 2 or 3 weeks, I got to know them. You get to know about a person much more from what other people say about that person than sometimes what the person lets on. And one fine day, I wrote little chits this big. And the chits had what I believe were the strengths of that player, the weaknesses of that player, and where I believed, not unrealistically, the player could go, and when. And I made those made them into little pellets, and I handed it to each guy before training. They didn't even believe they couldn't believe this was happening, this sort of touchy-feely sort of way of leadership. But each chit was tailored differently. Each chit, I had to assume the personality of that person's best friend. And that had to change. And I guess being an actor helps. And I found, without me having to say anything before a game, which is shout, 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 and just, you rev people up, each person had a sense of belonging. And we won the national championships. 9 months later, we beat the fancy team. We came from nowhere. We'd never played together before. There's also this great thing that I grew up listening to, which is you have to choose your style of leadership. You lead from the front, like a Kapil Dev, or you lead from the back, like a Mike Brearley, to use the names of two famous cricket captains. I think that time is gone. You have to lead from the front, and you have to lead from the back. What I did also in the team was I appointed a co-leader. So I said, look, I'm a back. I'm going to appoint a forward coach. I said, you're going to be the captain of the forwards, because I don't know what you guys do inside that scrum. I'll be the captain of the backs, and I will be first among equals when it comes to strategy and calling the plays. And again, that worked brilliantly, because for the first time, the forwards felt that they were being recognized. And finally, it's one of those sports where you have to have a hot heart, a very hot heart, but a very cool head. And with Indians, it doesn't come naturally. I don't know about the rest of the world, but certainly the subcontinent, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, when our hearts get hot, our heads get hot. And the idea is to teach the boys how to keep their heads cool and their hearts hot, because in rugby, if you lose your head, then they're playing 15 versus 14, because the one guy in your team who's lost his head is playing the man, is not playing the ball. Very differently, directing a movie was the most physically arduous thing I've ever done in my life, much more so than rugby. But in terms of its leadership, very different. So what did I do? The first day that I directed my first film. I called everybody in front of us onto the sets. And we all stood together. And I said, I do not know how to make a film. I do not know how to light. I do not know how to photograph the film. I do not know how to stand on the tarafa and hold the boom. I do not know your job. I cannot even make an omelette. So if you don't do your job, I will never know. If you don't do it well, I'll have no clue. And I'll probably have a film that is not as good as I dream of. I can tell you exactly what I want in terms of its mood and its feel, and the rest of it you do. I don't know if I got a better film because of this, but what I do know is I got a phone call a month after the film had released. Hello? Yes? Rahul Saab? So I said, yes. हाँ, मैं राजू बोल रहा हूँ. It's not a very uncommon name. I said, Raju कौन? Raju light boy. I said, Raju light boy. हाँ बोलो राजू. नहीं आप भूल गए. मैं Everybody Says I'm Fine. That's the name of the film. मैं Everybody Says I'm Fine का lighting में था. Okay. हाँ बोलो राजू. हाँ वो मैं film देखा. अच्छा. देखो सर वो है ना वो scene है ना जहाँ पे वो बमन साहब आते हैं अंदर. उस पे तो मुझे लगा कि acting में and he began to critique the film. He began to critique the film because he felt he owned it. He felt as invested in it as I was. Because he couldn't do what I was doing and I couldn't do what he was doing. And I said, for better or for worse, at least Raju is walking off one film thinking, I'm indispensable. This is going to sound controversial, but I exercised this on the movie. And that is, I believe it's always better to go for somebody who's second best than for somebody who might be the best and who will ruin the interpersonal dynamics of the group. I went for the second best, or even the third best, but I believe that it caused a stress-free environment, at least for me, while we were shooting. And of course, the most obvious thing that I started off with was never hesitate to say you don't know, because people will rush in to help. The universe actually has some very good people in it. And if you say you don't know, there are a lot of people who will just dive in there and lend their shoulder. And finally, my leadership lessons when I started my own non-profit organization. What we do is we go into an area, either through history or through geography, that's deeply disadvantaged in this country. And we spend a year looking at the entire pool of children in Standard 5, finally choose 6 kids and put them in a boarding school for 7 years, from grade 6 to grade 12. So every single funding body, every single agency, every single person and politician in politics or a bureaucrat turns around and says, what? You spending 1.5 crores on 6 children for 7 years? And I said, yeah. He said, you can build a school. I said, first of all, you can't, but even if it was if that was the argument and I could build a school, I wouldn't. He said, why? I said, because I'm leaving the macro to somebody else. I'm doing micro. I know those 6 children. I know exactly where they are today and what they're doing. So the idea of actually getting deep into, and we work backwards, then we find their houses need to be electrified back in the Andamans, otherwise they can't study in the summer holidays, and their mother needs to be given a job because otherwise there are accusations that she's making money being a prostitute, which she isn't, and you keep going backwards. And you're helping those 6 lives and families to finally build a slender bridge out. I will make those trips everywhere that's required, and I will make sure that the doors are open for you. You just focus with your heart and your soul on giving a fantastic education and a new life to children. I just wanted to say one last thing, and that is thank you for according me the honor of listening to me, of having the grace to sit while I chatted, and the only honor I can accord you is give you all my love. So, thank you.